Hello, thank you for joining me. So this is our last film. This is going to be our film number 8 in our series, creating a SolidWorks drawing using a SolidWorks part. And in this last film we're going to clean up the last of our dimensions and kind of show you a couple things. We're going to show you how to put in height, length, and depth dimensions. Right now all we relied on were smart dimensions that were embedded into our parts in our assembly, and then we went ahead and inserted those. But you can actually add dimensions too when needed. We're going to do a hole call out for a hole wizard location, which we haven't done before. We're going to play around with our precision in some of these dimensions, and then we're going to go label the isometric view over here, kind of show you how to take, if you haven't done so, if you don't want to add new annotations, you can copy annotations and put them into a different view. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and put in our total length, height, and depth dimensions in here. Let's just go ahead and do that. So maybe it's important to find out what the total length on our ultimate assembly here is, if it isn't defined in other dimensions. And you simply do that by picking the appropriate references, just like you would for a sketch element. And of course clean things up and make sure you have it, things pulled out, because this thing was at a different angle regarding these parts being put in. It's kind of difficult to get a full number on that, so it's going to be a rounded number, and it's not going to come out to a full 1/4 inch or 1/16 of an inch or 1/8 inch size. So you might want to do something different with that dimension and put something a little bit, maybe making an inspection dimension perhaps. But let me go ahead and clean this up first. Let's edit that sketch. Let's take the endpoint of that line, just pull it up just a little bit, go to rebuild. It didn't really change anything over here in our section because it didn't really move the line, but we got the line out of the way, so it's a little bit more visible. So if you want to take one of these dimensions and do something different with it, if you click in a dimension, you can go over here to the dimension properties manager over here and make corrections there. But another way of doing it is simply to click on this icon over here, and it quickly opens up and gives you most of the options that are available over here. As I mentioned in class, this gives you the ability to perhaps reduce your mouse travel. If you're doing this 100 times a day, 1,000 times a day, reducing that mouse travel might add up. A couple seconds here, a couple seconds there might add up to, a couple hours a week, and that's a couple hours actually you can spend on other productive ventures. So let's do this. Let's do making an inspection dimension. We do have other choices. We can start with the dimension. We could add parentheses to it, and a couple other things. So let's go ahead and make an inspection dimension. It's something that perhaps when the part's done, you want to make sure that it comes out to that value. And perhaps we want to reduce the precision on that down a little bit. So if you click on that, go over here, we can reduce our precision down. It's vertical justification, horizontal justification. Those are some elements there too that we can change. But unit precision, let's go to only 2 decimal points. And we'll go from there. So our width down here, let's go ahead and put a smart dimension. We'll go from that point, or that line, to that line. Let's go ahead and get out of that smart dimension. We'll click in this line, and then that line, and that line. Come on, let's pick it up. There we go. Yeah, difficult to grab that. That's kind of a predictable dimension, because that's a predictable size over here. That's a predictable size. And the tubing in the middle is fairly predictable too. And remember to pull your dimensions out so they don't intersect with your model, with your object lines. And finally a height. We can also put the height in here on this one. So if you select that element down here, this element on top, you notice that also you do get this little icon up here, this blue and yellow icon. It gives you the ability to put your dimension on one side or the other. Or you can do that by dragging your mouse out. And again, this might be an inspection dimension too. So let's go ahead and click on that and go to our shortcut, make an inspection dimension, and let's reduce our precision down a bit. And we'll go from there. Alright, so that's our height, length, and depth. Hole call out. It's difficult to get hole call outs on an assembly level, but I did put a hole up here in regard to, I'm sorry, let me back up. It's hard to get hole call outs on the assembly level when it's on the part level, but if you put a hole wizard location in on the assembly level, which you can, then it can call that out. So it's going to be difficult to pick up these holes, but it won't be difficult to pick up that hole. So let's go ahead and do this, just so we don't put this in other views in our model, in our drawing. Let's go ahead and click on that feature, go to model items, and this time we do want to pick our hole wizard locations and our hole call out for that. And this time we want to do it for the selected feature, which is going to be that hole. And we don't want to import the items into all views, just that one view, and go to green check mark, and there's our hole call out. So that should look familiar. It's a 3/8 inch hole, 16 threads per inch, but it actually measures out to be 0.3125 with a depth of 0.940 inches. If we were to do that the regular way, if we were to do that through Smart Dimensions, and just clicking that hole, all it gives us is that hole diameter. Not quite as satisfying, and if that's a threaded hole like this one is, and you don't want to, you want to put something in there that is a little bit more descriptive than that. So precision. In regard to these dimensions over here, you can change these dimensions around a little bit by clicking on that corner over here. That dimension might be a little bit more readable if we put it on that side. First, we're going to take this dimension and pull the dimension lines up and get those out of the way a bit. But this is really a 3/16 inch thick, wall thickness here. So let's go ahead and increase our precision on this just a little bit in order to get that value in there, which is an appropriate value. So let's do that. Let's go up here to our precision, and let's not make it, let's not put parentheses around that. And that does give you the ability, by the way, if you want to change that wall thickness here, you can do that by double clicking on it and changing its dimension. It's very similar to the dimension you might find in a sketch element. But let's unclick that, go over here, unclick that, and now we're as right as rain there. So some of these dimensions are a little bit redundant. We have a 45-degree typical dimension here, which kind of gives the angle of our cut down here. It's kind of redundant to that, so we're going to go ahead and delete that. These dimensions over here, it's always a good idea to put your larger dimensions on the outside, smaller dimensions on the inside. It just reads a little bit better that way. If you need to move your views out, now's the time when we're getting towards the end of our drawing down here to kind of move things around and make things a little bit more visible and easier to read. And I think the last thing we want to do is take our isometric view and label that. So let's go ahead and click on that. It's an existing annotation. Go to Control C, and if we click on that box over here and do the Control V, whatever annotation we put in there is going to have an association with that box. Not the right view, but just to demonstrate that, if I move that box around that contains an isometric view, that annotation goes with it. So instead of right view, let's go to isometric view. And we're in pretty good shape. We can identify that isometric view just a little bit better than that by calling it the top right front, or front top right isometric view, so that people get a better perspective on that. So I think that's about all I wanted to show you with this drawing. You can fuss with it some more and get these dimensions in the right spot. Again, your larger dimensions on the outside, your smaller dimensions on the inside, make it readable. You try not to get your dimension lines to cross each other, and you don't want your dimension lines to intersect with your part, with some of your object lines. You want to make sure you pull those off. And beyond that, I think I've shown you just about everything I wanted to show you about this, so I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you in class.